Who can take down Faze and how are they going to do it?
That's how the last podcast started. It's like, what would these teams have to do to beat Faze? And holy cow, man, Minnesota Rokkrr says, hold my beer.
Hold my beer, I'm cold in.
Welcome back, P2 Podcast episode 7?
8?
8? I have it set as 7. Is it really 8?
I think it's 8.
Whatever, but
We'll fix it.
we'll figure. We got way too many other things on our mind right now.
Oh my god.
We are going to be breaking down and giving our reactions to the latest tournament that just got done at Los Angeles, and holy cow, this honestly might have been the craziest tournament that I've ever experienced. It was
Like not just CDL, like CWL, all of them, bro.
I mean, it was just insane. Like, we saw so many teams step up. We saw a lot of substitutions come in this weekend. There's so much to talk about, and I don't want to linger too long in the introduction. First things first, we talked about this a little bit last week. I think we're going to restructure this podcast a little bit differently. Whereas in the past, we kind of went through and broke down each of the matches individually. I think that a better format for us to try, and you could definitely let us know in the comments below, is to break down how teams did as a whole. So go through and we'll start from the bottom, start with the people that got knocked out, and just kind of take a dive on each of these teams, see what went right, see what went wrong throughout the whole weekend. I think that that's going to be a better format moving forward.
And going along with that, we wouldn't dive too far into their matches like we do right now. So be sure to let us know for sure.
Yeah. You guys have been killing it in the comments recently. I absolutely love hearing what you guys have to say. Even if it's negative, I get it if you disagree with some of what we were saying. But yeah, I originally was getting hate from this kid over here saying that Dallas couldn't win this weekend. I forgot. I should have called this where it was like Dallas up front and then Optic in the finals as well. And you were like, no way.
Bro, you know they shouldn't have won.
We'll get into it. Hey, turn your gain down a little bit. We don't want to deafen all of our viewers here. Yeah. So let's get into it. Let's talk about a few notes I want to touch on about the event as a whole, as always. The first notable thing I want to talk about is this weekend. Is this the first weekend that we haven't seen Huntsman?
Yes.
So one thing I noticed right off the bat is, and I don't want to say it was because of the Huntsman, but the viewership was significantly less this weekend than weekends previous. I get it that like launch weekend obviously had a lot of hype. We saw it peak around like 90,000 people watching. And then tournaments after that, like the London one was the first time we saw this tournament format. So a lot of people wanted to see that. Obviously there's a lot of hype around Faze, as a whole, as an organization. So we saw a lot of viewership there. This was the first weekend that it kind of felt like, I don't want to say stale yet, but people kind of got the idea. They didn't have a lot of these like question marks and everything. There wasn't a whole lot of hype leading up to this, but I saw it kind of stagger around like 30,000 viewers for the most part,
Yeah,
which I thought was very interesting.
And the other weird thing was this was the first tournament that was like around the same time as they usually are too, like time of day.
Oh yeah. I mean, we're on the East Coast, so it was a little bit later than what we're used to. That's why the podcast is airing so late, and that's why I'm going to be up until 3 a.m. editing everything. But you know, it is what it is. I do it for you guys. But yeah, I definitely noticed a lot less viewers pretty much throughout. I think it peaked up a little bit more towards like 50,000 right there at the finals. I didn't see it go above 60,000, but just thought that was something to note. Do you think that that's going to be a common theme throughout some of these tournaments, or what can the CDL do to kind of amp this up rather than just rely on certain teams to boost those viewership?
I mean, so if you think about it, we're in the first week of March. The average like age, I guess, to be watching Call of Duty would be people like in school still.
Sure.
Like more than 50% of them, I would guess, are still in school. Some of them may be on spring break right now. So I
Oh,
mean
that's a good point.
that may play a factor, but I don't think tens of thousands of
Yeah,
people
I was
would
gonna
be
say like
watching.
20,000 people. Like that's a big jump, and especially this is the first year Call of Duty being a franchise. Like we're definitely gonna be view counting and people that are paying for all of these ads that they run all the time.
Dragons,
Oh my God, there were so many ads.
dragons.
But like, people are going to be counting. Like, okay, how many eyes are my ads actually seeing, or is it going to be the same amount of eyes, um, you know, each weekend? So we want to drive more viewership, and the numbers is definitely a big factor there. So
For sure. I wouldn't count too much on the numbers of this weekend. I mean, it may have just been an off weekend. Who knows? Maybe a lot of people just had a bunch of other stuff going on. It was one weekend, so I'm not gonna weigh too heavily on it.
yeah, hey, turn your gain a little bit back up. I'm just going to turn you down in stream.
Good lord.
Sorry, I just want to, it'll make my life easier for editing. But the other cool thing I wanted to know, again, we're going to try and keep you up to date for all of the Challenger League stuff as well, in case you guys are interested in that. I think it's definitely cool. I wish there was a little bit more coverage on them throughout. It would be cool to pop over to a stream, since there's so much downtime in between these matches. I think it would be better for the people that are experiencing this at home to be able to pop over to another stream and at least watch more Call of Duty and see what's going on in the open bracket or in the open challenger tournament. Sorry. But the thing that was pretty cool is Parasite, who has been a Call of Duty pro for a long time, apparently threw together or jumped into this ragtag team and they won. They beat Singularity in the finals, who Singularity I think has won every tournament that they've been to. I know that Faze won the last one, but I'm not quite sure if Singularity was there at the Faze tournament. But yeah, that's kind of cool to see. And Parasite was kind of hyping up all of the kids that he was playing with, and they were asking like, "Do you think this is a good path to pro?" And he kind of, you could tell he was kind of salty because he's been very vocal about how much he wants to be a pro and how much he thinks that some of the pros that have been around for a long time kind of got screwed out of being into a team this year. But yeah, that was definitely cool to see. His team won. Singularity did not look happy at their performance. They did not want to be up on that stage after they had just lost. But yeah, hats off to that team. That's cool. I wonder if it was like them backpacking onto Parasite or if it was just kind of them as an overall team that brought them the dub. So,
and I wonder how Parasite feels, especially after this weekend of how many amateurs that we saw like move into pro teams and not him. So,
right.
Wonder how he feels about that.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't hear them announce how much money they won, but I assume it's a pretty decent margin. So he can't be too unhappy about it, but it would be nice to have the consistent pay of being on a pro team, especially with Parasite. I mean, he's a good player. He's definitely been on some questionable teams throughout the past, I don't know, 4 years maybe, but he has a good track record, and he's no different than Doug, who Doug is very vocal about wanting to play. And again, I haven't seen Parasite play in a while, but I'm assuming they're on the same sort of caliber in terms of skill. So,
well, I'm guessing Parasite will drop more than 4 kills in a 0 hard point.
Oh, that clip was so funny though. Oh my goodness. But yeah, good luck to Parasite, and I hope he ends up finding a team. I think that we're getting into the point in the season now where these pro teams are starting to see, okay, something needs to change. We need to either bring new people in or start trading. And I think the easier step would be to bring in new people and then just sub out their current players rather than getting rid of their current players currently. So good luck to him. Good luck to Singularity. That was super cool that they won the first 2 tournaments. Yeah. So, all right. let's get into this. I was hoping they were going to upload the bracket, but that's okay. We could just follow it. Like I said, I want to start off with the lowest teams of the weekend and see kind of what went wrong with them. Let's start off with the Subliners. Is that cool with you?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So Subliners started off this weekend. They played the Dallas Empire. Obviously, that's a hard match right out of the gate. I don't really have a whole lot to say about this one.
I think Donnie actually showed up for once. He has not been a very consistent player recently.
Okay.
And I say recently, and I mean like since Black Ops 3.
Who'd you say? Donnie?
Donnie Temp.
His real name is Donnie? Or I didn't know that. Okay. So Temp. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah, sorry.
It's all right.
I just haven't seen a lot from him, but I feel like this weekend he definitely stepped up. I think subbing Happy in for Zero was kind of a gut check to the rest of the team. Like, yo, if we don't play well, we could lose our spot to maybe a guy like Sensor or someone else coming up from the Challenger series. So I definitely think that it put New York, or it put a fire under their butt. But definitely, I think Temp stepped up. So I was happy to see that from him. But they just weren't firing on all cylinders, unfortunately.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those things where my biggest pet peeve on any team really is if their main strategy is to rally behind one player. And I think that that's kind of what the New York Subliners do, is they each kind of hope to themselves like, oh man, I hope Attach kind of goes off, or I hope Temp kind of comes in clutch and shows up this weekend. So
I've noticed that with almost every team.
I mean, all of the mid-tier teams, yes, I kind of agree. Definitely the lower tier teams, you could see that in like the Ultra. Previously, I kind of saw it with Optic. Again, we'll get into it, but Optic kind of had a rough start to the season just because they played so many good teams right out of the gate. But even when they were going up against those big tier teams, I kind of felt that with them. Like, okay, is Dashy gonna turn up, or is TJ gonna turn up, and then we could just kind of fill in the cracks? Like, you can't do that. You can't wait around for them to do that. But yeah, I kind of agree with subbing in Happy was, especially for who did he replace? Zero, who's a really good Call of Duty player. So it's like, and
I would have taken Temp out, honestly.
But then, like you said, I would have. I mean, he was one that kind of turned up, but
for once, though, I don't know.
I don't know. I feel like subbing in Happy kind of just added a new dynamic to the team. They went up against.
Happy did not do well.
No, he did not. That was kind of going to be one of my overarching questions, because that was a big thing going into this weekend. Was, are these sub players going to make a difference on all of these teams? We saw subs on 4 of the 8 teams. With the Gorillas, it was 3 of their players were subbed in. So that was like the big overarching question. And I don't think it did it for the Subliners. I don't think that was the answer that they needed. I think they know that, though. They're going to go back and kind of review what went wrong against the Dallas Empire. I think that the Empire is just such a good team. I mean, obviously they ended up winning this tournament, but I feel like the Subliners just need to go back and work on their fundamentals. And I don't know. I mean, maybe at this point, look at who's winning. Maybe watch a couple of Dallas Empire games and see like what they're doing as opposed to what New York is doing and what is succeeding and what's not. So, but New York Subliners went up against Dallas Empire and Florida Mutineers, who Florida made it into the finals this last tournament. They did have a sub in. They put in Pharaoh for Pristini. Pristini tweeted earlier this week that he was having mental health issues. Definitely, I hope he takes the time he needs to clear his head, and hopefully he'll come back and kind of still be riding his hype wave. So, But yeah, it was just too much for the subliners this weekend. I
Oh,
definitely
we
think
talking about? Is that a transition into Florida now? I got some stuff.
let's transition into. Yeah, I mean, I want to talk about Gorillas too because they were the other one
All
that
right,
got immediately knocked
let's do
out.
Gorillas first.
The reason I want to do this format is because I don't want to dwell too much on these teams. If we don't have a whole lot to say, if they just came in and sucked, that's one thing. But yeah, I don't want to dwell too much on these. But yeah, the Gorillas came in. They had subbed in 3 of their players for what you would think on paper is 3 of their stronger players. So that was kind of interesting to see coming into this. I do want to they played against the Rokkrr, who again played phenomenally this weekend. So I can't harp him too much for losing 3-0. But I do want to talk about this Gorillas and Optic match. So Optic ended up surprising a lot of us this weekend. They ended up playing very well. But what happened on this match? I didn't get to watch it against the Gorillas. Do you have anything noted there?
Let me go to the notes real quick. Try to boost up the memory.
Yeah, it looks like Gorillas took off the first 2 maps. They were both very close, 234 to 250, and then 6-5 in the S&D. And then it looks like Optic kind of came alive that second half. Maybe it was just their first time playing this weekend, you know?
So the first hard point, I don't really have anything to say about it. It was a kind of close game. The second hard point, Optic looked very strong at the very beginning, but LA Gorillas ended up coming back and winning 4 in a row. They had 9 first bloods that whole series. Vivid, one of the new subs from the Challenger series, went 13-8. And
You're saying
like
in his S&D?
yes, sorry,
Yeah.
in the Gunrunner S&D.
Yeah.
He went 13-8. That's huge coming off of, or like being his first pro game against some big name superstars.
Yeah, I think a lot of these subs had a lot to prove this weekend. It was kind of do or die. Like if you came in and you were a name that not very many people knew, I'd never heard of Vivid before, but
Yeah.
this definitely gets my attention. The fact that he went 13-8. And then it was cool because you wrote down LA Gorillas won 4 rounds in a row to get the comeback.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's definitely noted. Optic needs to work on their search and destroy.
Yeah.
We'll get into it when we talk about Optic, but I definitely think that certain players need to step up for them. And it's cool that LA kind of was able to counter those weaknesses that they had, kind of execute on those moments.
You thought LA did a good job?
Well, I thought that's cool that they're able to win 4 rounds back from them. You know?
You're not getting my joke. It's okay.
I'm not.
Gave him a head cut. They're both LA teams, brother.
Oh. Wow. Okay.
Other than that, once the Gorillas won the first Gunrunner S&D, Optic flipped their switch and they turned up. Slasher and TJ turned up in the Hackney domination. Slasher 30-17, TJ 33-22. They overall did a really good job flipping their switch.
Yeah. But obviously, as you could expect, subbing in 3 players, I don't know, a week before the tournament, 2 weeks before the tournament even, LA Gorillas definitely did not perform as well this weekend. So
Yeah.
let's move on. Let's kind of talk about the Florida Mutineers, who did end up winning one of their matches to get out of that, I don't know what you would call it, like pool play or preliminary matches, I guess.
Yeah.
So I started off the weekend playing Atlanta Faze. Obviously, Faze came out to play. They just looked so stinking dominant. But I will say that there was a lot of eyes on Pharaoh this weekend, and obviously the search and destroy didn't go too well. But I felt like Pharaoh as a whole did a pretty decent job this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I think he knew that a lot of eyes were on him. A lot of people did not want to pick him up because of his actions when he was younger, but he's been killing it on stream. The guy has been on a grind, and even when they were getting smacked by Faze, he was still smiling. Like, you could tell he was having a just great time being back on stage again. And now that he's a little bit more grown up, that's the kind of guy that I would want on my roster. Even when you're getting beaten down into the ground, like he's still smiling, and he's probably still bringing up that team.
Right. Just having good vibes overall.
Mhm. But man, I don't know why they put Pharaoh on that roster when you have a god sub like Maniac.
You already said this. Jeez. We want to see the Maniac play one map at least. Come on.
Oh, for sure.
Aren't you allowed to
One
sub
round
in?
invested.
Aren't you allowed to sub in mid series? Like, oh my god,
Yeah.
let him play one round, dude. You know, he was a Halo pro for a while. He could shoot the gun. Just let him play.
Exactly.
Just let him play.
One thing I was thinking about though was, in my eyes, Mox has not been performing real well.
Really?
So I definitely think Florida's gonna keep Pharaoh. I think they're gonna use him as a sub.
Sure.
But I think Pharaoh's going to be gunning for Mox's spot. I feel like if Mox doesn't turn up here soon, he can be replaced.
I think I heard one of the casters mention this briefly, and I thought that was an interesting point where it's like if Pharaoh can prove himself, like once Prestini comes back, yeah, I mean, I've always been a big Pharaoh fan. We saw him at COD World War II Champs when he was on TK, and he had a great run with TK. He was a really, really, I mean, I feel like he was one of their clutch players that year.
Yeah.
Obviously, he kind of had a scrappy year last year. I think he just kind of filled in cracks in different teams. He was on 100T for like a match.
The beginning.
Yeah. So, yeah, I think he's a good player, and I think if given the chance and if given enough driving force, he could be that person to kind of step up for the floor.
And see, I think he has a driving force. So him subbing in for anyone on Florida, my guess is just Mox.
Sure.
Him subbing in could be a very good potential, but if Florida doesn't pick him up, I think that's their loss.
Sure.
He looked really good with the people that he was playing.
Mm-hmm.
And if I was on that Florida team and I was playing with someone like Pharaoh this weekend, I would be talking to the GM like, "Hey, let's sign this dude." Because worst comes to worst, if something bad happened, they got someone to fill in,
Right.
someone that they know can step up.
Sure. No, that's a good point. Definitely, I think a play is to just like nab as many players as you can and keep them on the bench. That way, you can be one of those teams that's playing around with a lot of these subs.
Yeah.
If things aren't working out very well. But all right, let's keep it moving. These next couple teams are the ones that I really wrote a lot of notes down for and have a bunch of questions that I want to ask you about. Let's move on and talk about the Seattle Surge. So
All right.
this was another team that had I would consider it a pretty controversial sub in. They did take out Enable and put in Pander, which Pander was a player that I wasn't very familiar with. But after watching the podcast with Enable, he was like speaking on there. There was definitely another force behind why they subbed him in. There was definitely some team issues where one player even said, like, if you don't sub him out, I'm benching myself or I'm leaving. Yeah. I don't know what contracts say it there, but there was speculation that it was Octane, which is kind of interesting to me because I don't know. I thought that this team would be able to get along well. Sorry, I'm getting over being sick, dude. I'm struggling today. But
You're good.
Yeah, I would say out of all of the subs that came in this weekend, I think Pander not only did the best, like performance-wise individually, but I think he actually did the best for his team as well. I've always said that Seattle is very much like a slower, I don't want to say like textbook team, but they feel kind of like they're just playing a little bit slower and they're kind of doing the right stuff. They're just not putting the other team in a place of like frantic. And I thought that, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like Octane definitely played a role in how well they did. Well, he definitely did.
My
Played a
God,
role,
Octane was crazy this weekend.
but was he the one in your mind that was like, hey, let's stop trying to go off what we know and let's go off some of our gun skill? Like if you have a team with people that have been playing forever, a lot of them are going to be like, all right, well, what have I done in the past that has helped me? Like, what do I know strategically about this game? And do you think Octane was the one in the comms or before this tournament, like, hey, let's just come out and shoot the people?
I
We'll
don't
win if that happens.
I don't know, because one of the things I wrote down is in the couple of comms, like the Astro listen-ins that we had over this past weekend with Seattle, I didn't really hear somebody calling like shots of what they should should do. There was no real like in-game leader with the Seattle Surge. So I mentioned this in the past where it's like somebody needs to step up and take that role. But
Yeah.
I don't know if it was Sam or Octane. In the past, I thought it would be Enable. I feel like he's just got that kind of extroverted personality, so he would kind of fill that role. But yeah, I don't know if it was Octane the one that really steps up, because the other guys are pretty quiet.
Yeah. The trap I don't want to see them fall into is not having an IGL, which I could see how they would fall into that trap
Yeah.
because they're all very smart players. If you have a team full of very smart players, do you need an IGL? I'm in my mind, yes. You always need one.
Absolutely.
But I can see how they can fall into that trap.
Either that or they need to have a good coach. Do you know who Seattle's coach is, if they have one?
No. Don't.
I'm not sure if they have a coach. I could be wrong on that. But they need like a strong coach. I feel like a lot of these teams are finding those coach positions to kind of rein in all of those really good pros. Like we said in the past, where it's like we have less teams this year, so we have more superstars on each team. A coach kind of really does a good job of reining in all of those players and kind of make sure they're all in line, doing their job, not going at each other's throats or anything.
Yeah.
So
I don't know too much about the IGL stuff going on. I think we'll just see how it goes. One last thing I do want to touch on Seattle is if you're Pander, you're gunning for a spot no matter who it is.
absolutely. Going back to Go ahead.
Now that we have 3 weeks off, I definitely think the team is going to be trying out Apathy, Karma, Pander, Slack, and Octane, and they're going to try out Apathy, Karma, Pander, Enable, Octane. I feel like the two question marks are above Enable and Slack.
Yeah, Select, I've definitely seen him kind of underperforming a little bit. Like I said, there might be some team issues by putting Enable and Octane on the same team. But yeah, I definitely think Pander at this point is like, all right, I'm in. Like, put me in.
Yeah.
I think he did an incredible job of adding a little bit of that like aggression to the team overall. I thought he did very well this weekend. Yeah, there were maps that he didn't do too great on, but as a sub, you can only expect him to do so well. So yeah, Pander definitely exceeded my expectations this weekend. Hats off to him.
For sure.
Sorry, dude, I'm literally dying. I haven't spoken.
Yeah, I don't know why.
I haven't spoken to humans all day, and I've just been. Well, I've been trying to get over this sickness, so I do apologize.
Yeah,
I should have got a cough drop or something beforehand.
No. Optic? Optic?
Yeah, I guess so.
Bet.
Yeah, we kind of said it going into this weekend that this was do or die for Optic. They needed desperately to put points on the board. Like taking an L for the weekend was not an option for them. And it's scary to me the fact that LA Gorillas got that close to giving them that first L right out of the gate.
Yeah, for sure.
Because if you lose to LA Gorillas and then go up to against the Rokkrr right after that, that's scary, man.
Yeah.
But
even though, like I said, I bet you the same thing that happened with Seattle with me thinking like someone said, hey, let's put our guns out there and let's win some series. I bet you that's what someone in Optic said. Like, hey, we're a really talented team. Let's just focus on getting kills. We're gonna win the match. And I think that's what happened because they came out and looked like a completely different Optic.
I agree. I think I mean we've said it from the beginning. Like they're a stacked roster. There's no reason they should be doing as poorly as they've been.
Mhm.
But I think they have Pac-Man as the coach. They have a strong coach. They've got strong leadership and throughout the team. I think given enough time to figure out why they're not, winning some of these scenarios and some of these maps, I think given that amount of time, I think they're going to be a good team. They just haven't figured it out as quickly as other teams. But the thing I want to talk about is a lot of people, man, have been talking smack to me about my JCap. I know a lot of you people do not like JCap, but it's like he's put in this weird role. I felt like he did step it up this week. I can agree with you that he has been kind of underperforming for the team. And if he had not stepped up this weekend, it should have been an out for him. Optic has two really good subs. So I think that he did well enough to prove the fact that he should stay in. I do want to point out, though, that his role on the team is kind of to be, and there's not really a word for it, kind of to be this just annoying player that finds their way in the middle of the map or the outside of the action and just kind of hits people in the side. And that's kind of a tough position to do. If I had to compare him, I think Silly is a master at doing this. I've seen Clay be really good at doing this. I think that's why Atlanta Faze is so good, because multiple people on that team are so good at doing this. Just understanding, like, okay, if there's going to be action over here, maybe my best play is to go around and hit it from this side or completely flank him and go around back. And
I thought we saw a good part of that, or like a good example of that with God RX in the final series on the gun runner domination, where if you have one player that's being a thorn in the other team's side, God RX was on the C flag, and it took Dallas so long to kill him that his team had to end up coming back from B.
Yep.
Let Minnesota capture it just to kill him. So if you can get a whole team backing off of a flag to kill one guy, you did a good job.
Well, and that's the other thing too, is that role kind of relies on your other teammates to win those gunfights, and the Optic just hasn't yet. So what's been happening is like JCap's been around on this side trying to do something silly, and Optic will lose all of their gunfights on the front side. They'll count them up, be like, hey, there's only 4 people. The whole team will turn around and find JCap by himself. Like he's not gonna put up those crazy huge numbers. But I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's still at a point. No, never mind. I'm not gonna say that. I think now that Optic is finally trying to find a foothold, they made it to top 3 or top 4, tied for 3rd, 4th. I think they should keep JCap in. But, I mean, it does beg the question. I know Chino is a very kind of fast, aggressive player as well. Would he be a better person for that role, understanding that he has to play that position of, like, being a thorn in the other team's side?
I was definitely on the JCap get out of here train. I haven't been a fan of him, but he definitely did put up good numbers today. Looked like a good team player, but I'm still not 100% sold on him. I definitely think they take these 3 weeks and sub in Chino for a couple scrims, sub in Goonjar, and see or try to figure out exactly what their best roster lineup is. Because, like I said, there's 3 weeks. That's a little bit more time to figure out exactly what's going on.
And here's why I agree. Like, if they were to take JCap out, I wouldn't be too mad. It's because JCap is garbage at S&D. Even the caster said it. He's never been known for his S&D. And And kind of that thorn in the side kind of player is usually the ones that gets like easy kills around the map. You know what I mean?
Like First Bloods and S&D.
Sure.
Like,
So it's like I would understand if they took him out for the S&D reason, because Optic needs to find out their S&D game a little bit better. And there was a couple times where it came down to JCap in a 1v whatever, or even like a 2v whatever. And I did not feel confident in Optic closing out the round just because JCap was still alive. So
we'll see, and maybe that's what they do. Keep JCap in on the respawns. That's what subs are supposed to be for. Sub them in on the parts where maybe a starting player is not doing so great. Put in Goonjar. That kid was a god in Search and Destroy. Now, if he doesn't work out with the team, put in Chino. This is where the subs become a really good commodity to have.
that's a good point. I mean, I could get behind that if they wanted to do that. I think that overall, if he were to figure out his position in the respawns, that would make him a better S&D player on Optic. So you would think so.
And especially if Goon and Chino play that thorn in the side position, they're like, they won't need a lot of team chemistry with the other four. Like, yeah, they'll still need it. They'll still need to learn the strats. They'll need to practice search and destroy with the team, but it's not as detrimental as some other positions would be.
Right.
So I definitely think it would be a good idea to put in some subs during these next 3 weeks, figure out what's going on with their roster. They could be a really great team. They showed.
Sure. Yeah, they definitely did show it this weekend. They ended up, like I said, getting tied for third, fourth. They did lose to the Dallas Empire, which honestly was a little bit. Huh?
Like, Dallas won the tournament. Like,
Oh, yeah, I get it. But like,
I have it highlighted that I want to dig into that series a little bit more. So
this match,
yeah,
let's do it, man. I mean, I thought it was very cool that Optic could take out the hard point right away. And it very much looked like Optic's game. Like that Dallas did not look like the same Dallas that won the championship today. They made like Optic made Dallas play their game on that first hard point.
for sure. And you see in the stats, Dashy, TJ, and Slasher both putting up amazing numbers. Dashy with 35 and 23, TJ 33 and 27, Slasher 31 and 18. Like, those are some guys that you expect some good kills from, and those were who I wanted to see really, really step up. Those are some big name players that need to be putting up those numbers every single time, especially against a team like Dallas.
I think so too. TJ surprised me, honestly.
Yeah, he needed to come out big.
He was good at certain tournaments last year. Obviously, Optic had some weird experimental role changes and like specialist changes, but I felt like overall he was a pretty consistent SOG player last year. And when I saw him not do too well at the first couple tournaments for Optic, I was a little bit surprised, but he seems to be finding his footing in this game a little
Finding
bit
his
more.
rhythm, yeah.
But yeah, Dashy, you expect Dashy to put up a lot more numbers. There was a role change within Optic, and I didn't really see a difference. Like, they talked about the role change, but I didn't see a whole lot of difference just like watching them.
I did. So Dashy pulling out the MP5, you definitely saw his name a lot more. He had a lot more engagements than what he usually did. If you have Dashy and what's up?
I thought Dashy, was he their main AR before? Is that how that worked?
I think they had two main ARs.
Okay, that makes a little bit more sense. I thought they just made him a main AR from a flex this last time, but no, that makes more sense that they took him off AR and made him more of a flex player. Okay.
Because if you have Dashy and Slasher both playing AR, that's two guys sitting back. And with JCap not doing that great at the beginning of the season, like, that wasn't helping. But then you had two guys that weren't getting a lot of engagements. And so with a guy like Dashy going up and getting engagements, they're going to start winning a lot more matches. And Slasher came out and said he felt more comfortable being the only main AR, and that showed up in his stats as well.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, that makes a lot more sense. I definitely saw, Dashy's name pop up more, like you said. They talked about him a lot more, so hopefully he feels a little bit more comfortable in that role.
Yeah. Gunrunner search and destroy though with Optic against Dallas. Dallas took it 6-2, but Optic looked competitive. And that's, I think, the second time I've said that with Optic versus Dallas. The last time was Arklov S&D. Like, yeah, Dallas won 6-2, but Optic looked like they could have taken a couple of those rounds and maybe the map.
That's where I'm going to disagree with you. And I kind of disagreed when you wrote this down. So Optic won those first two matches pretty early on in the search and destroy. And then the second that Dallas started trying new things, and I think that's what ultimately won them the S&D in the finals. They're so good at being like, okay, let's try something new. I think it's Clay behind them, honestly. Clay's kind of that guy where it's like, hey, let's try a fake A push and then go B. Let's 5-man hit this rather than just play it slow. I think he's kind of the one calling the shots behind there. And the second that they started changing it up like that, Optic could not figure out how to counter it.
Yeah, I mean, like, once Optic gets knocked back on their heels, then they're going to topple over. But if they can figure out to, like, stop, take a deep breath, I think that they can be competitive.
It's just, that's why I wouldn't give them, that's why I wouldn't say they were like competitive in this S&D, because all of those good teams are going to do that. And this just shows me that you're not able to counteract that. You're not able to.
But see, once they are, then what happens?
Maybe, but they
took the first two rounds, from what I can remember, pretty like heftily too.
They did. It was close. But yeah, I just think that other top tier teams are going to look at this and be like, oh, we just need to try different strats with Optic, and then once we find one that works, just keep doing it. That's kind of what this shows me here.
For sure.
But the domination was pretty close. So was the hard point.
Lord, Dallas should not have won.
Yeah, it was very close.
The Optic choke curse, man. It's going from lineup to lineup. Optic choked an 81-point lead, I want to say, on Hackney Dom.
Yeah.
And like that's a map where the 3 caps can happen. They happen for 10-15 seconds. It's such a small map. It's hard to come back from a deficit. Jesus.
What just happened? What just happened? Was that a cat?
Yes.
Oh my god.
Can you still hear me?
Yes. Did it spill something?
No, he just ripped off my mix amp.
Someone tell me that cats are better than dogs. Come on now.
They're not.
No, dogs are so much better.
I'm going to open the door tonight.
Oh my god, that's so funny. But
anyway,
to get back
into Call of Duty.
To get back into it, one thing I did want to note, I forgot to mention at the beginning of the podcast about the overall venue. I saw a lot of Optic fans there today.
Yeah, for sure.
That made me kind of happy because I had hopes for the Call of Duty community that the green wall wouldn't have this weird hate towards Optic Gaming. Like, obviously, all of the people that are on this team or affiliated with this team had nothing to do with the downfall of Optic. Like,
yeah,
I think it was a little bit of a weird call to keep the name, but I understand why they kept it. But it was very cool to see the fact that there was Optic fans there wearing the merch and, proud to be part of their team. And it was a little nostalgic hearing the "Let's go Optic."
Let's go Optic. Yeah,
it was a little.
Was nice.
I was like, man, okay, good for you guys. So yeah, hats off to you guys, repping your team. It was very cool to see that there were Optic fans, and I mean, I like the team. I hope that Optic gets better, and can be a little bit more of a competitive team. They showed that they could, hold with the best of them this weekend, kind of. So yeah, good luck to them. I hope that they do well. I'm still kind of a fan of them as individuals. So
yeah,
Yeah, I just thought that was very neat to see. Something to note.
For sure. I just nothing really going on in the Dom. But I definitely think that now that they have had a really good showing, that they could come out and be like, "Hey, we don't actually like suck too bad. Like
Right.
they're still not top tier. They still got to battle for the top 8, make it into playoffs. But now they would be a team that maybe wouldn't be surprised to see up there in the top 8.
Sure. Well, it's just like, I mean, it's just like we said, like all of these teams are actually really good, you know. Even the teams that are at the bottom, like they're still very, very competitive. They've got really big names. They all have the potential to be great. It's just right now we're just seeing who's great at the beginning of the season, you know. We're still only 4 weeks in. I mean, if you want to count like tournament weekends, 3 or 4 tournament weekends in, so
Yeah. Great.
still pretty early on. All right, let's so Optic Gaming
Minnesota?
got tied for 3rd, 4th. Let's move on. No, we got to keep going up the ladder. Atlanta Faze got tied for 3rd, 4th this weekend.
Oh yeah, that's what I meant.
I'll say that again
Nice.
just so we all understand it. Atlanta Faze got tied for 3rd, 4th this weekend. Man,
I was hoping for a Faze Optic
you
championship.
wanted Faze and Optic in the what is wrong with
This
you?
morning when I woke up, I was like, bro, I want that fight to go back. The Faze Optic. Ooh.
And do you think
That would've
Optic
been
could
nice.
do anything against Faze?
Oh God, no! I just wanted to see those 2 names.
Oh my God. So we got to talk about Atlanta Faze because it's like I'm watching yesterday and I'm watching them absolutely mow over the Mutineers, mow over Dallas Empire. I mean, and all of
They
the
had
talk.
a 3-0. What was it? Another 3-0 on Seattle. Yep.
Yeah, I mean, all of the talk was how much like
Who's
they're
gonna
just
beat
dominant and there's no like the big question surrounding them is what is their weak link in the chain there? It's like
That's what I wrote down. That's what I wrote down before they played Minnesota. I was like, what is their weak spot? Who can take down FaZe and how are they going to do it?
That's how the last podcast started. It's like what would these teams have to do to beat FaZe? And holy cow, man, Minnesota Rokkrr says, hold my beer.
Hold my beer, I'm cold in.
But kind of though, I mean, Atlanta FaZe should have won like 5 times in this series, man. I mean, this series was insane to me. I mean, Minnesota gave them every opportunity to capitalize and win, and Minnesota just pulled it off, man. It was insane.
It was crazy. You wrote, this is a match I did not get to watch because homework.
Oh, lame.
But you wrote down Silly going 30 and 29, winning the clutch gunfights.
Like
but Minnesota's still outsmarting FaZe. What happened there?
So, yeah, this was one that FaZe was kind of dominating. And I didn't finish my notes here because I was so blown away that Minnesota brought it back in the end. But
in the Azir hard point.
Yeah, but Silly was kind of the one right off the bat where, like I said, Silly's kind of that guy where it's just like he plays kind of abnormally on purpose just to try and catch them off guard. And he was winning against the 2 or 3 players on FaZe that also do that. And then they were still losing like these rotations because Silly is only one man. He needs his rest of his team to do it. So it's like Silly's winning these giant key clutch fights on the rotations, but then FaZe were just like so good at like coming in and breaking in the hill. And then later on as the match went, I think FaZe just kind of got lost in their own sauce there, man. I mean, it was just so much chaos going on. There was too many people trying to do too many different things. And Minnesota won some like weird rotations. They also did this thing where it's like teams are starting to realize when to fight for spawns for the next hill or just fight for that regular hill that's like on right now, if that makes sense. So Minnesota, they love playing for P1 time where most teams play for that P2 spawn, But if Minnesota can get 50 seconds off the P1 hill, like you could essentially just chalk up that whole second hill. Like it doesn't matter. So that's what I meant by Minnesota just outsmarted Faze in that aspect, where it's like Faze are already rotating, but Minnesota's still racking up a ton of points, like, and not being contested in any way.
Yeah, that's one of the gambles that you have to take on a zero hard for sure. You
Oh,
want to lock down those east side spawns, but you can't let the other team rack up the points, like you said.
Especially in Azir, yeah. I mean, I would say Azir and Hackney, it's like you can try maybe once or twice to break that hill, but at some point you got to realize like our spawns are more important for the next hill. So it's like we should stop hitting this. We should start setting it up here. Even if that means you give up like 20 seconds, you know what I mean? Like sometimes it's just better to do that early on. But yeah, Minnesota Rokkrr, I feel like this weekend they just did a great job of understanding like we don't need to fight for next hill. We could just hold this hill really stinking well.
Okay.
So I think that they just played hardpoint really, really well this weekend.
Dope. Well, good for Minnesota. Gunrunner S&D said Minnesota through the game. Faze taking it a 6-4.
Yeah, let me read my notes here. Oh, that's right, because Minnesota, my God, was getting every first blood in that match, and then they were losing. They would get first blood and then immediately push out their position and get beamed from somewhere else. So it's like, why would you get first blood and then immediately push? Like, I think they eventually figured out not to do that, but my God,
That's just
man,
something you can't do against Atlanta.
And I think that they kind of flipped it around in the Dallas game. Minnesota did. They did a better job of just sitting there, but FaZe just capitalized on them because they were just like, if three people push up super fast and you get in the Minnesota gets first blood, you got to expect a couple other people to be right there too. So it's like,
yeah, for sure. And if they're not right there, that team moves across the map so quick.
So it's like, it's so much better if you can get that kill and then get away with your life rather than trying to get a 2-piece knowing that they're going to have a bunch of teammates around them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
anything else?
I definitely think Rokkrr threw that game. The domination was pretty close. FaZe did a great job on second half. They didn't have a good spawn to start off the domination, so they kind of played very chaotically. But then the second that they had the good spawn, I forget what 2 flags those are. It's the B flag, and I don't know if it's A. I think it's A.
A is the preferred side.
Maybe. But whatever that preferred side is, they played to a T. I mean, it was just like textbook. Everyone was here locking down that whole side of the map. Minnesota did not break that line of defense that they had on that flag. So it was a pretty easy domination win from FaZe, honestly. And then
anything in the hardpoint S&D?
Yeah, the fact that Minnesota had no right winning that at all. I mean, it was all FaZe the entire time.
What happened?
Like, if I'm a coach, I don't tell Atlanta to do anything different. I feel like 9 times out of 10, Atlanta would have won this match. I just think that, again, when it comes down to making those split-second decisions, Atlanta is so spread out and doing so many different things on the map that it's hard for them to understand, like, okay, can we win this gunfight and hold this hill, or do we need to push out? Because that's what it came down to. It's like a couple of these hills, like, they did a great job of rotating to these hills early, but Minnesota, again, just knew exactly when to fight these hills and then just whether or not to hold them. And it came down to a nail biter right there at that last hill, man. That's probably, I don't know if that's going to be on our top plays because I don't think anything stood out.
Is it closer than the Hackney hardpoint that we'll talk about later?
Yeah. Oh, it definitely was. It definitely was.
It was back and watching that tomorrow.
It was ridiculous. Yeah. So if you didn't watch this match, this match is definitely worth watching as a whole to understand like what exactly went wrong for Atlanta FaZe. I think that sometimes they just get lost in their own sauce, honestly. Like,
yeah.
And they show that they obviously have the skill to kind of come together and play kind of textbook if they want to. And I think that they shouldn't be scared to bring that kind of gameplay out more, where it's just like, don't push as much. Let's just play a little bit more passive, wait for them to come to us because we have the gun skill we need to win these matches. So,
Okay.
featuring Audrey in the podcast.
Featuring Audrey.
Featuring Audrey. She says, hello. Audrey, what do you got to say about this weekend? Anything major?
Yeah, she didn't watch. She hates COD.
How does one hate COD, man? That just hurts my soul a little bit. But anyway, yeah, Atlanta Faze get knocked out. This Piccadilly Search and Destroy, I kind of saw this one coming. Like I've said in the past, I mean, Minnesota Rokkrr are better at range. That's just how it is, man. And they played in a way where it just kept people further away. One thing I did note about this, let's see if I can find it in my notes. Oh, never mind. I was gonna say Asim, he had a couple matches where he did not do too well, and he had the post game interview. I don't want to transition into Rokkrr too quickly, but yeah, he had a couple games where he just didn't do too well. It was on the side of Faze. I mean, he knew that Faze plays very aggressively and their subs are just really good. So he's like, that's not putting me in an optimal position to do very well. I think that the times that ASIM didn't really do too well, Atlanta Faze kind of capitalized on that. So they just need to do it better with all of the other players on that team. So Atlanta Faze played very well this weekend. I definitely think they're still arguably the top team. But, and I definitely,
I don't think arguably.
Well, you're right. I don't think arguably, just because Faze should have won against the Minnesota Rokkrr. And if they had gone up to Dallas Empire in the finals, I guarantee you it would have been a ugly swipe and Faze would have won it. So
I'm curious to see COD points though after this weekend.
They posted them. New York Subliners are last. I can try and pull it up on Twitter if you want. But while we're waiting for him to do that, let's transition into our final two teams, which ended up being Dallas Empire and the Minnesota Rokkrr. I guess we'll start with, let's start with Minnesota. We've kind of been talking about Dallas off and on. So Minnesota came out, they played Seattle Surge and won 3-1. Again, I think that Minnesota was just too good and they have too many different play styles. They can play kind of in your face or they can be mute range. Whatever you want to pick. I think that they were just too much for the Seattle Surge to handle, especially with Panda.
Yeah. I mean, I just want to know what Minnesota needs to do to be, or like, they need to be more consistent, but what do they need to do that? If that makes any sense. Like, how do they become more consistent?
This was like, you stole my big question. I wanted to do the big reveal.
Oh, there it is.
Not really. Yeah, not really a big reveal, but it's just like, I see no reason why Minnesota Rokkrr can't be one of the best teams in the CDL right now. After watching how they've played, and they've played a bunch of different teams too, and that's kind of why I feel this way, where after watching them play and seeing kind of their like play style, I don't see why they're not one of the top CDL teams right now. And that was kind of my question, was like, why not? Like, what's going wrong for them? And I think that one of them is inconsistency. And honestly, I don't know what needs to happen to make them a little bit more of a consistent team. Maybe it's, I don't know how their scrims are looking, if they need to maximize their scrims with these different teams.
Yeah.
Because it just depends on who they play. Like, sometimes they look dominant against other teams, and sometimes they struggle. Like,
They don't. Like against Optic.
Against Optic or Dallas. The team that played Dallas, an hour and a half ago, like, was not the same team that we watched Mo over Faze. Like,
Yeah.
they can't be that inconsistent.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Did you have a good reason or a good way to make them a
With
little bit more
Minnesota,
consistent?
no, not really. Like I said, I'm getting tired of seeing teams in the CDL, not just Minnesota. Like I said this earlier, this podcast, I'm getting tired of people like backpacking off one person that's doing well. The whole team needs to step up, and it's just as simple as that. You can't be like, oh well, this guy sucks, so meh. God RX or isn't hitting his snipes. He's getting hit markers. Meh.
Sure.
Like no, you if he isn't getting those kills, then you step up and do.
Maybe they just all need to step up a little bit more individually. I think
Mm-hmm.
maybe now that I'm thinking about it, like I said, Asim really did not have a couple. He had a couple maps where he sucked. I mean, he went like triple negative in one of the maps against FaZe. Like, I understand that FaZe is a particularly hard team to deal with that, but like, you need to deal with it. Like, that's your role. Your role is to be a sub player. Like you said, you can't rely on your team, your other teammates like GodRx to pick them apart from a distance all the time. Like, you need to be able to deal with that. I felt like there was a couple other people on the Rokkrr too. I'm trying to think of a scenario. Is it Assault that's on there?
Mm-hmm.
Like Assault had certain times where I felt like he was underperforming a little bit. So maybe just like honing in their individual inconsistencies and understanding why individually sometimes they do super well and sometimes they do not do super well. I think that could help the overall team, and how they do against all these different teams. Just figuring out like
Yeah.
maybe figuring out individually like why a sim. I'm just using him as an example because that's
Yeah.
just the one that popped into my
Popped into your
head.
head.
But it's like maybe a sim personally should go back and watch these VODs and see what he could have done to counteract FaZe a little bit more. And if each of those members did that, maybe they would get a little bit better.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's the really only thing I have for Minnesota. But staying on that consistency topic, let's talk about Dallas.
I think they're
Um,
in the same boat. Yeah.
you're in the same boat. I'm scared for some of the players on Dallas. Like, yeah, they won this weekend. Props to them. They're a really good team. But do you think some of the Dallas players need to step up and be more consistent with someone like Tish on the bench right now? Do you think they need to step up to hold their spot, basically?
I don't think so. I think the deciding factor for that is Clay, because
Hmm.
I definitely see Clay as kind of like a dad role where he's had a couple young guns on his team in the past and he's kind of been that coaching factor that kind of gets them up to speed and makes them the stars. I mean, obviously like Simp before he came on E United last year was a god. Everybody said like he's been beaming me since I was like since he was like 14 years old and hopping online and playing against pros like. But I mean I think it's a little bit of a credit to Clayster to kind of like build that roster and make sure they secure him early and kind of help him get into his first like CDL team. And I just kind of see him being that dad role for these new kids, Shotzi and Illy.
Yeah.
So I definitely don't think that there's going to be a team change or a substitution anytime soon. Especially now after they've won one, they can. I'm sure their team morale is going to be at an all time high right now. So
Yeah.
I don't think that they need
What
to sub
What do you
anything
think
in.
is their week? We keep talking about Phase's weak spot, but let's talk about Dallas. They won this weekend.
There was a couple
What?
times where I saw Dallas when their game plan that they had, you could tell they had a game plan going into the match, and when that game plan wasn't working out, you saw them panic.
Yep.
And that can't happen. And I think that's why the Huntsmen are so dominant against Dallas because like the Huntsmen know I don't want to turn this into a Huntsman fanboy podcast. They didn't even play this weekend. But it's like
Ooh.
But it's Huntsmen like know that Dallas are going to be watching them, so it's just they do a good job of like playing differently against them, and it catches them on their heels. I felt like there was a couple times here where Dallas like New York even took a map off Dallas. Like New York is last in the CDL, and they just took a map off of the team that just won today. Like that in my head doesn't make sense, and I think it was because of that. Like Dallas probably hasn't been watching New York a whole lot because they haven't been winning anything. So it's like, I don't think that they had like a good game plan going into the subliners, and then the subliners kind of capitalized on that. So I definitely think that that's their biggest weakness right now. They need to be a little bit more flexible when playing against these teams.
See, I agree with that, but man, I think it's Krim. Just in general.
Dude, you love to hate on Cryptic so much.
How many times in the Hackney domination did you hear quadruple negative?
Yeah, I mean, there was a couple times that he definitely did not perform very well.
So in the Hackney hardpoint, Minnesota won 250, 247, nail biter game, insane. That's a very small map, and it's on hardpoint. You expect kills to be through the roof, and maybe deaths through the roof if you're getting a lot of interactions. Krim went 14 and 33.
You can't do that, man. You can't do that.
And how many times, like, writing down these notes, I've noticed that I've been writing down like a lot of names of people people putting up crazy numbers, people putting up not so good numbers. I don't think I've put down Krim putting up good numbers.
Again, I think that he's kind of one that, because Clayster's our main AR, correct?
Mm-hmm. He's a flex. Krim's a flex.
So if Krim also has to play that position of like being a weird flex player on the map, I don't think that his job is necessarily to put up all those numbers. I think that I think that's one instance that they can rely on those younger guns to kind of put up those numbers, because he has like ridiculously good teammates. Like Hook did an amazing job this weekend. And I think that shows that Crim6 could still put up bad numbers and they could still pull out the W. Mm-hmm. I know that's contradicting what we just said about you can't piggyback off your teammates, but yeah, I don't know. I think that he was the main AR last year for Optic. I thought that he thrived in that role a lot. I think it's interesting that they chose him to be that flex rather than Clayster to be the flex player. Maybe that we could see a role change there. I think that would be a good thing on their part, but I don't know. Maybe, I mean, different COD pros, it takes them a little bit to figure out this game. So
yeah,
I'm not sure. Let's see if I had any.
It's a weird one. I think that's all I have to talk about the tournament. Do you have anything really about the tournament? I do have a couple other things I want to say before we...
We can update you guys, see on our predictions for this weekend.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
If you want to do that.
Go for it.
So we both guessed Atlanta would win. Mark guessed a 3-0. I guessed 3-1. I thought that Florida was maybe going to take a map off. Was that before we knew Pristini was being subbed?
Yes.
Yeah. So, again, I thought
there's a lot of changes that we made or that were made
after our last podcast. So
yeah.
I thought Pristini was going to be in there. It's not that Pharaoh did poorly, but I just thought that they were going to take one map off Atlanta. We both guessed that Minnesota was going to take it over Seattle. You called this one with 3-1. I said 3-2. I thought that Seattle was going to... I mean, again, this was another do or die weekend kind of for Seattle, and they did not show up as nearly as much as we had hoped. We knew that Panda was going to be in there at the time of the podcast, I believe, but yeah, I don't know if they relied on him too heavily to, I don't know, gain momentum and win some maps.
Yeah.
But. And then we both said Dallas 3-0, which, again, subliners took one map off. I don't really know what happened there. It was just kind of those weird fluke moments. But yeah, Dallas won 3-1. And then we both said OGLA 3-2 against Los Angeles Guerrillas. So did you call all of those maps?
Thanks.
Wow, look at you go.
Yeah.
Dang, son. Oh no, we both said Dallas 3-0. So but you had your top teams being Atlanta, Dallas, Minnesota, and Seattle. And I said the top teams were going to be Atlanta, Dallas, Rokkrr, and OGLA. So we were both way off.
Yep.
And like I said, I hoped that they surprised me, and man, they did. They did surprise me this weekend. So we'll be sure and tally up the points. I think how we're going to tally up the points is if you call the if you call the map count, I think we're going to give you like 5 extra points. So we'll be sure and catch you guys up on the next podcast and see who's in the lead and everything.
And we should be able to show you guys what we're giving away next podcast. We probably will not be doing a podcast.
Look, I'm working on it, okay? We told him it was going to be merch for this first one, but I'm working on it.
It's coming up.
I made a dad hat the other day. The dad hat is sick. I got to make another one. So,
just to keep you guys informed, I will be in Florida next week, so we probably won't do another podcast this upcoming Sunday.
I thought we were doing one on Saturday.
Oh, yeah, we are.
We could talk about it. So this is going to be weird because we now have 2 weeks until the... I'm sorry, 2 bye weeks until we get to the Dallas tournament. So we might not talk about Call of Duty in the next podcast. We might talk about it. I don't know. We might try something a little bit different next podcast. We'll see if you guys like it. But
before we do leave, I got the CDL points right here.
Oh, sure. Where'd you find them?
Some weird website.
Okay.
Chicago and Atlanta both tied with 90.
Okay.
Dallas Empire. That shows you how much a win can bring you back up. Dallas Empire with 80.
Really?
They were in like 5th or something.
Yeah.
Minnesota Rokkrr was 70. Minnesota's in 4th. 5th and 6th is Paris Legion and the Mutineers at 50. So that means they're 20 behind Minnesota.
Sure.
7th is London. And at the cusp of playoffs right now, you need to be top 8 to make playoffs, is Optic Gaming, 20.
Jeez.
Oh, they're actually tied with Seattle right now. So they're tied for 8th and 9th, Optic and Seattle, both at 20. Bringing up the rear in 10th, 11th, and 12th is Toronto, Gorillas, and Sublime, both with 10.
Man. Yeah, what's that analyst name? Is his name Rich? Rich. He had a funky way of describing this thought, but I think he made a good point. He described it as there's a lot of teams on this bubble, and whether or not they're going to be on, like, essentially what he's trying to say is there's a lot of teams trying to fight for like the top 5 or top 4 spots right now. Mm-hmm. And now that we're seeing a lot or more of these tournaments and a lot more teams kind of like surprising us, like the Minnesota Rokkrr or Florida Mutineers, there's a lot of teams that are still kind of like fighting for this bubble. And then I feel like there's a kind of a big drop off to the bottom half of the teams right now. I would say like the top 6 teams are fighting for the top 4 spots. If that kind of makes sense, you know what I mean? Like, it can kind of go any way.
With what you said. So say Minnesota has a bye.
Okay.
They're in the top 4. They have 70 CDL points. And say Optic or Seattle are at that tournament and they miraculously pull off a win, that'll put them tied with Minnesota at 70 CDL points.
Okay.
So keep in mind, Seattle and Optic are battling for 8th and 9th. Minnesota is 4th.
Sure.
So it is still anyone's game. If one of the bottom 3 teams comes out and wins, that'll put them up in 5th.
Right.
So it's still too early on right now with COD points. But then again, if you are in that bottom 10, your main goal is to be in that top 4. So you got a long ways to climb there. You got to win an event plus.
Yeah, they're definitely, if you're in the bottom couple teams, it's starting to enter desperation mode at this point. Like, you have to start gaining some sort of traction. I mean, if you're getting absolutely stomped in every match you go into, like, you need to find something that starts to work and then just kind of build off that. So yeah, the desperation mode is definitely, if I'm on the New York Subliners, it's starting to set in.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, okay, I get what you're saying. I guess the top like 8 teams are trying. It feels like the top 8 teams are trying to fight for like
top 4.
Top 4. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I feel like it's gonna be a bloodbath till.
Which is great. I mean, that's so good for the community to like feel that kind of drive behind all of these teams. It's super entertaining for me to watch. There's matches this weekend that I watched that I really didn't care whether it went either way, but it was so entertaining to watch because it's like, oh my gosh, if this team wins, like that's gonna be huge for them. So that's super good for the community that we're kind of doing that. So
other than that, I don't have anything unless anyone in chat wants to put something up real quick. I think I'm good.
Yeah, I don't have a whole lot to talk about either. We're one more weekend closer to the Chicago event.
Let's go, bro. I'm gonna be so hyped.
Definitely let us know if you guys are going to any of these events. But yeah, let us know if you're going to be at the Chicago event. We'd love to say hey and talk about some COD, man. That's what we love doing. That's why we started this podcast. So we'll probably try and bring a couple extra items of merch. So if you definitely come say hi to us, we may or may not be giving you guys something cool to wear.
Hit you up.
We will see. So
possibly, maybe if Moisty gets some merch done.
Sorry, I'm busy doing literally everything else for this channel.
Like
roasted.
I am the content. If you watch our stream, Moisty's just there to be the second player.
Okay, that just kind of hurts. I die a lot so that we can watch your POV because that's what we all want to see. We get it. We get it.
All right.
All right, I think that'll about do it for this weekend. Thank you all for tuning in. For all the people that tuned in live, if you haven't already, definitely go follow us on Twitch, twitch.tv/player2gaming. If you're on Twitch right now, definitely subscribe to our YouTube channel. Yeah. Got anything else?
I think I'm good. We've been live for like 80 minutes, so.
Yep. All right. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. We will see you next Saturday, probably. If not, definitely 2 weeks from now. We'll be back on that Sunday before
Tuesday and Thursday.
Before the Dallas tournament. Yeah. And we'll be streaming here and there throughout the week. So, all right. We'll see you guys next time. Thanks.